Romeo Nthambeleni is a legal analyst and joins me now. Romeo, good evening to you and welcome. This was a top proposal from that commission, chemical castration. And while Sisulu didn't share the research or the science underpinning their call, what is your view on the legal implications should it ever come to this?
Thank you, Iman, and good evening to you and the viewers. Look, this is not the first time this issue has been raised. In 1999, the South African Law Commission dealt with this issue, and they made recommendations to Parliament. And unfortunately, due to the status of our Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, the Constitution, the chemical castration could not pass the constitutional muster. But from what we are seeing now on the grounds, we have a real crisis in our hands, and there must be proposed solution on how this issue is addressed going forward.
Well, what can we learn then from countries like Thailand, South Korea? We've got some US states, the Czech Republic and the Ukraine, who've adopted this form of punishment for years now. In fact, in the Czech Republic, they actually perform surgical castration following that law that was introduced in the 60s.
Yeah, thank you, man. I think a comparative analysis is quite important in this view. And in the case in point of the US that you have referred to in Texas, what they do in that state is that it becomes voluntary, because the most fundamental issue that we have to look at is that it affects the human rights. And what is important under the South African Constitution is we must bring it closer to home and look at the Bill of Rights of South African Constitution, which speaks about bodily integrity. And there's no doubt that it offends to that bodily integrity. And that is the balancing of rights that actually has to be done. And in the US, they do it as a voluntary mechanism of saying that people who want a quick exit out of the criminal justice system can actually opt for that as an option, but not as something that is actually imposed and forced on each and every offender. And they look at specific offenses and repeat offenders and pedophiles.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about the voluntary nature of it. I think the Thais are also experimenting with that model in exchange for a reduced sentence. But I want to come back to what you're saying about the Bill of Rights and the protection of bodily integrity. Some might say your rights in respect of that particular right is revoked or ceded when you take away that right from another human being. And in the case of rape, it is the bodily autonomy of another human being, the bodily integrity of another human being that is being violated.
Yeah, you're quite correct. But our Constitution, Iman, speaks about inhuman and degrading punishment. And I have got no doubt that this chemical castration will be classified as that. And this is the same debate with the death penalty, by the way. And we remember the celebrated judgment of State versus Makwanyane, which speaks about the death penalty as an inhuman and degrading punishment. But when it becomes voluntary, it's something else if a person actually opts for that, based on the Constitution and the rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution. And the question that you're saying, which is important, Iman, is that can we apply the limitation clause of on the rights of the offenders and try and balance the rights of the offenders and the victim? Unfortunately, the answer is no, because what we are dealing with is Section 2 rights, which are the rights that are in the Bill of Rights that cannot be limited. Example, the right to dignity, the right to human life. And no matter the offense, the death penalty was outlawed as something that is inhuman and degrading. So I don't think the limitation clause of the Constitution applies.
It's interesting when you're saying that, and if my memory serves me correctly, it was Voltaire who said, with regard to, I think, around justice and the death penalty, better, that 1,000 guilty men go free than one innocent person be sent to die. I could be misquoting the quote, but you understand the principle. The question, though, is, given, the passion with which the ANC, in the way that Sisulu shared that yesterday, is prepared to pursue this or wants to pursue this, if not now, then at some point in the future, it would suggest that they have, a lengthy legal path that they would have to follow to achieve that.
No, you're quite correct, because like I said to you, previously, man, this is not the first time it's happening. In 1999, they tried it, it was not successful. So it means that it has to go through the very same process, and the bill must be passed in Parliament. And the question is whether the bill is going to pass the constitutional muster, and that will have to look and decide when the bill is passed in Parliament and is debated and is sent to the state law advisors. And perhaps if it is done in a matter that is going to be voluntarily, and then perhaps it might pass the constitutional muster. But the question of the constitution is that the Bill of Rights in South Africa trump over the rights of an individual in relation to not being subjected to any experiments. And section 12, subsection 2 says, speaks precisely about the experiments, and that is going to fall under that particular class. Do we have a crisis relating to rape and sexual offences in South Africa? Yes, that is true. What other solutions can we actually bring? The rate of convictions must go up. The investigations in terms of the policing must also, be looked at again. Because Iman, that at some point we're looking at police stations that don't even have, the rape kits. So the solution might also be having a sexual offences court wherein these matters are actually dealt with and brought in speedily, because the rate of report is low, but the statistics are high when it comes to rape itself, because the offenders are concerned that nothing is actually happening, and they don't see actually having faith in the criminal justice itself and the police, as a count.
I think as a country, Romeo, as we begin to think of, solutions or interventions that we need, to enact both in the medical field or in the social anthropological field, or how kids are raised, what they're taught at school, to change, this picture of violence and assault that we live with in South Africa. It's quite a complex, quite a complex path to undertake. We're going to leave the conversation there because I think that we will have the opportunity in future discussions to talk about how effective chemical castration has been as a deterrent and as a practice in countries that have adopted it. But we thank you for your insights this evening. Legal analyst Romeo Nthambeleni, just sharing with us his views on chemical castration in the South African context.